Shortly before his crucifixion and resurrection, Jesus Christ delivered a major prophecy of end-time events, recorded in Matthew 24, Mark 13, and Luke 21. He was asked by his disciples, "When will these things be? And what will be the sign of your coming and of the end of the age?" Matthew 24, 3. Jesus responded with a description of conditions and events that would lead up to his second coming. Moreover, he said that when these signs became evident, his return would occur within one generation. Matthew 24:34. Could this be that generation? Throughout the nearly 2,000 years since Christ gave his prophecy, many have thought that theirs was the time of his return, and turned out to be wrong, of course. But interestingly, there are a number of prophecies in the Bible that could not be fulfilled until our modern era, the post-World War II period. Number 1. The human race would have the ability to exterminate itself. In Matthew 24:22, describing world conditions prior to his second coming, Jesus said that, "If that time of troubles were not cut short, no living thing could survive. But for the sake of God's chosen, it will be cut short." Revised English Bible. The main message that Jesus Christ brought was of the coming kingdom of God. This is described as the gospel, Mark 1:14. Gospel means good news. While some of the prophecies concerning events prior to the establishment of the kingdom can seem negative, we should always keep in mind that the central focus of Bible prophecy is the good news, gospel of the coming kingdom of God. Matthew 24:22 shows us that if Jesus Christ does not intervene in world affairs, the human race will be faced with extinction. It's crucial to note that humanity has had the capability for self-annihilation for only a little more than 50 years, since both the United States and the Soviet Union developed and stockpiled hydrogen bombs, and the world had to learn to live with mutually assured destruction. Number 2. A Jewish homeland had to be re-established in the Middle East. Geopolitically, the central focus of end-time events is Jerusalem and its environs, what many people refer to as the Holy Land. Luke 21 is a parallel chapter to Matthew 24. Notice Luke's account of Christ's long prophecy that answered the disciples' questions. "Teacher, when will these things be? And what sign will there be when these things are about to take place?" Luke 21:7. In response, Jesus showed that Jerusalem would be the central focus of the political and military upheavals that would immediately precede his return. But when you see Jerusalem surrounded by armies, then know that its desolation is near. For these are the days of vengeance, that all things which are written may be fulfilled. Luke 21:20-22. Anyone living a century ago would have found these words nearly impossible to comprehend. Jerusalem in ancient times had been fought over countless times, but for 4 centuries from 1517, the city had been at peace within the boundaries of the Ottoman Empire. Jews lived there as a minority under Turkish rule. But this was going to change dramatically during the course of the 20th century. It had to change for the fulfillment of Bible prophecy to take place. The Old Testament prophet Zechariah was used by God to reveal a great deal about end-time events and the second coming of the Messiah. Zechariah lived and prophesied more than 500 years before Christ's first coming, yet his prophetic book tells us a great deal about our world of today. In Zechariah 12:2-3, God says, "Behold, I will make Jerusalem a cup of drunkenness to all the surrounding peoples, when they lay siege against Judah, the Jews inhabiting the land of Israel, and Jerusalem. And it shall happen in that day that I will make Jerusalem a very heavy stone for all peoples. All who would heave it away will surely be cut in pieces, though all nations of the earth are gathered against it." In Zechariah 12:9, he adds, "It shall be in that day that I will seek to destroy all the nations that come against Jerusalem." Number 3. The end-time king of the north and king of the south. In Daniel 11, we find an amazing prophecy about 2 leaders, the kings of the north and south, the heads of regions that were geographically north and south of the Holy Land. To understand this prophecy, we have to go to the time of Alexander the Great, who lived near the end of the 4th century BC, 200 years after Daniel. Alexander figures prominently throughout the book of Daniel, even though Daniel did not know his name and never knew him personally. He couldn't have, since he died almost 2 centuries before Alexander appeared on the world stage. But God revealed to Daniel that after Babylon, Persia would arise as the greatest power of the region, to be followed in turn by Greece. Not surprisingly, the prophecies regarding the rise of Greece are centered on Alexander the Great, one of the greatest conquerors in history. Daniel 8 gives a vivid account of the coming clash between Persia and Greece. As you read it, remember that a horn symbolizes royal power and authority. Persia had 2 horns, and the 2 horns were high, but one was higher than the other, and the higher one came up last. This refers to the Medo-Persian Empire, the coming together of 2 nations or peoples. As foretold here in Daniel 8:3, the Persians rose to greatness after the Medes. In Daniel 8:5, we read of Persia's later defeat by Alexander the Great. And as I was considering, suddenly a male goat came from the west, across the surface of the whole earth, without touching the ground, and the goat had a notable horn between his eyes. Daniel 8:5. The notable horn, or royal leader, was Alexander the Great. The prophecy about his army not even touching the ground is a reference to the incredible speed with which he conquered the known world. All this was achieved in a very short time. Alexander died in 323 BC when he was only about 33 years old. Even his sudden, unexpected death was prophesied. The male goat grew very great, but when he became strong, the large horn was broken, and in place of it, 4 notable ones came up toward the 4 winds of heaven. Daniel 8:8. Number 4. The gospel will be preached in all the world. In his major end-time prophecy, Jesus answers the question posed by the disciples. When will these things be? And what will be the sign of your coming and of the end of the age? Matthew 24:3. After listing a number of signs of the nearness of his coming, he reveals that this gospel of the kingdom will be preached in all the world as a witness to all the nations, and then the end will come. Matthew 24:14. The gospel is the good news of the coming kingdom of God. This message could not be preached around the world without the Bible and freedom of religion. Both came gradually with the ascendancy of the English-speaking peoples from the 16th century until the present day. However, it was only with the technological advances of television and radio and other means of mass communication after World War II and their widespread acceptance that it became possible to reach hundreds of millions of human beings with the message of the Bible. The gospel of the kingdom of God will continue to be preached to all nations, as long as we have the freedom to continue the Good News magazine and our other media efforts. Even so, during the last 50 years, it has not been possible to reach all countries. The former communist nations did not allow freedom of religion. China, with 1/4 of the world's people, still does not. Other nations also try to suppress the publication of biblical truth, and even the Bible itself. Many Islamic nations do not allow religious freedom. In some countries, people risk the death penalty for changing religion. But the internet is changing everything. It is much harder for governments to control. The gospel message of the coming kingdom of God is still going out to the world. It will finish when God has decided that his work is completed and the time is right for the final end-time events to take place. Will this generation see God's kingdom established on earth? We have seen how 7 biblically prophesied circumstances could not have come to pass until recent times. In fact, the establishment of the State of Israel in 1948 was clearly a major turning point in the fulfillment of Bible prophecy, as was the acquisition of the hydrogen bomb by the 2 superpowers of the 1950s that led to the period of mutually assured destruction. All has now become possible. This, in turn, makes it much more likely that our generation will live to see Jesus Christ return and establish the kingdom of God on earth. After all, Jesus himself said that once these things begin, the generation alive at that time will by no means pass away till all these things take place. Matthew 24:34. It's both sobering and encouraging to think that we appear to be living in the generation that will ultimately witness the most important event in the history of mankind. As Jesus Christ tells his followers in Luke 21:28, "Now when these things begin to happen, look up and lift up your heads, because your redemption draws near."